to is East Bay EDA. I'd like to welcome all of you to our 2021 spring membership meeting, and I'd like to call that meeting to order at this time. Today's topic is the future of food, and it promises to be an exciting and informative topic. As we begin, I want to say that we hope all of you, your families, your friends, your colleagues, have found your way through managing this economic time, this COVID-19 time that has impacted all of us. We're excited to see that we are now seeing signs of visibility about rebounding and recovering as vaccines are deployed and people begin to get back to some of the routines that many of us took for granted just a year and a half ago. We are glad that you were able to join us this morning to learn about our organization and to hear from our speakers about innovation in food that's happening right here in our own backyard in the East Bay. East Bay EDA has about 150 members from business, government, special districts, environmental, educational, research, labor, philanthropic, and nonprofit organizations. We provide customized research and business support services to these members, and we frequently partner with and help promote and sponsor their events as well. Our first virtual event was exactly 1 year ago today, our 2020 spring membership meeting. Since that time, East Bay EDA has held more than 10 virtual events, including our signature East Bay Innovations Award, which I hope many of you tuned into. Speaking of which, our nominations for the 2021 East Bay Innovations Award are now open, and we hope that you respond to them. Get the word out about it. Please help us to nominate outstanding business and organizational leadership from our region, people to be recognized for their signature events and the things that they produce. More information about our upcoming event, the Innovations Award, can be found on www.eastbayeda.org. East Bay EDA does a lot of work to generate original content and information for our members and stakeholders. As I mentioned, the 2020 spring membership meeting was our first virtual event, and also where we released our 2020 East Bay Economic Outlook Report. Another publication that we recently helped produce is the 2021 East Bay Book of Lists, a directory of free business services available both online as well as in print. The current edition was just published back in December, and all of these resources are posted on an interactive map, which can be found on our website. Later this year, East Bay EDA will be unveiling a regional economic analysis and strategic plan, a roadmap for how we will realize our vision for a more equitable, resilient, and sustainable economic recovery. This report and strategy document, which we will be calling East Bay Forward, will be unveiled at the East Bay EDA Falls membership meeting, which will be held on September the 23rd. And we hope that you all will tune in and Zoom in for that meeting as well. Today's membership meeting will feature an incredible East Bay business leader, as well as highlighting the creativity and innovation which is happening right here in our own backyard around creating and scaling now plant-based food products. Before we hear from all of them, however, it's our first opportunity to have opening remarks from Bay Area food icon, Martin Yan, as we kick off today's event, The Future of Food.
Hi, I'm Chef Martin Yan from Yan Can Cook on Public Television. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of the East Bay EDA Spring Membership Meeting. When the topic is about food in the Bay Area, there is no way I will miss it. Yan Can Cook, and today, Yan can talk about food in my beloved East Bay. Like so many in the food industry, I have an early start, beginning from my uncle's popular restaurant in Hong Kong. Then onto the Overseas Institute of Cookery in Hong Kong. and eventually receiving my master's degree in food science from UC Davis. Anyone familiar with the Yan King Cook Show know that I have been hosting the Yan King Cook Show from exotic locations all over Asia and around the world, including Europe. Yan King Cook in China, Japan, Korea, Australia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, Burma, just to name a few. One of the most memorable series is Martin Yan's Chinatown, where it gave me an opportunity to film in Chinatown around the world. Oakland has a living, bustling, and vibrant Chinatown with everything you can find: fresh produce, seafoods, and a variety of exotic ingredients at a great price. I have lived most of my life in the Bay Area. My association with the Bay Area Public Television KQED in San Francisco dates back early 80s. This was the reason why I moved to the Bay Area. I had the opportunity to host the Yan King Cook Show on KQED. For more than 40 years, I'm still on the air making this one of the longest continuous running food and travel shows in the US and perhaps around the world. I know that I have a lot of friends and supporters from the East Bay. Thank you all. So why is Northern California, especially the Bay Area, such an innovative part of food technology and trends? We are all familiar with the history and the growth of Silicon Valley. How a small community of innovative minds can do to change the world when they are in a nurturing environment. The East Bay, with its truly diverse ethnic community, is the natural birthplace for an exciting food culture. People from various parts of the world bring in with their food, culture, heritage, and art. Imagine a melting pot of the Berkeley counterculture, the African-American roots, the Oakland Chinatown, and the new generation of various immigrants from all over Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and India. And then add the rich and wide spreading Latino influence, and we get a truly unique mixture of energy, excitement. Berkeley and the East Bay has a diverse mosaic of different cultures and different ethnic community. From both sides of the Pacific, food is intricately tied to culture. So East Bay is a perfect place to embrace the delicious melting pot. That's why it is a community where so many innovative food trends began. I only need to mention my dear friend Alice Water, her restaurant Chez Panisse, and of course her world-famous herb garden and her involvement in the community. She is truly the champion of good eating and healthy lifestyle. I dearly love her. And then there is a success story of Berkeley Bowl. Who knew that bowling alley can be a birthplace of the whole new way of life? Long before there was Whole Food, there was Berkeley Bowl. On any given evening, one only needs to walk around the water edge of Oakland's Jack London Square, and he or she will be greeted with so many beautiful restaurant aroma and the wonderful restaurant color, menu, everything you can imagine is available in Jack London Square. Some are newcomers, and some of the restaurant has been there for years. The East Bay is the mecca of American culinary trends and innovation. Look at the panelists today. Their innovation will revolutionize the food industry, not only in this country, but the whole world. As a professional chef, I always feel that the East Bay is on the cutting edge of tomorrow's culinary innovation. Today's panelists are a distinguished group of companies that we are all familiar with. First, Impossible Foods, a plant-based burger sweeping the nation. Their mission was to impress the meat lover, Their plant-based product, mission impossible and mission accomplished. Prime Root, vegan and gluten-free meat alternatives such as bacon, lobsters, and chicken. Kai Hill, plant-based dairy alternatives such as yogurts, cream cheese, and ricotta. Another one, finally, CCD Innovation, a culinary development and commercialization agency, helping companies reimagine food from start to final product. Let us talk about the future of food. How will this pandemic change the way we think about food? How will food insecurity be addressed in the future? The pandemic and the shelter-in-place orders have made our kitchen the center of many households in the East Bay. For the first time since the 1950s, families are actually cooking, eating, enjoying their meals together. Sharing food is creating a bond of unity. Families who eat together stay together. The pandemic also made us question our life's choices, and that includes our diet and our way of nurturing not just ourselves, but the entire world. The term food insecurity is the newest way to describe what I knew as a child: hunger. But insecurity can also mean more than just quantity of food. Many of today's generation lack the quality of good food, the right kind of diet that will sustain a healthy body. Not only our lives as a human being, but also our planet's life. But not paying attention to the environment impacts of our dietary choices, we are making our world food insecure. San Francisco may be known as a city by the bay, but its East Bay cousin, Oakland, Alameda, San Leandro are all sitting on the water edge with a spectacular view of the fog rolling into the bay every afternoon. What can I say? We're so blessed to live in the Bay Area, particularly the East Bay. I do hope that none of us will ever take any of these for granted. You will later hear what our panelists have to say. Impossible Foods, Prime Roots, Kite Hills, CCD Innovation. What do these panelists have in common? Instead of looking at food at what it is, they look at food as what can be. What better ways are there to produce fabulous and healthy food? And finally, bring it to our dining table where we share good food and a conversation. Our dreams and aspiration. Food is the common thread to bring people closer together. Another question, what can we do to foster economic development while promoting environmental safety concern? These are themes that my friends on the panel would address in more details. Let us pay close attention. Their ideas will affect all our lives and that our children and generation to come. The Bay Area, and especially our distinguished panelists, are our hope for the future in the entire East Bay. Therefore, it is time for me to pass the mic on to the future, those who thrive in the East Bay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chef Martin Yan. Good morning, East Bay. My name is Michael Parr, and I am Vice President of International Sales for Wente Family Estates, located in the lovely Livermore Valley. For those of you who might not be familiar with our winery tucked away in Livermore, Wente Vineyards is the oldest continuously operated family-owned winery in America, and that's out of about 9,000 wineries. For many California wineries, including Wente, the pandemic was an extremely challenging period of time. Where their tasting room, restaurant, and golf course closed for over a year, we relied on developing a stronger online and retail store presence. Fortunately, both of those channels grew significantly for us over the past 14 months, which helped us to offset some of the losses due to the on-premise closures, not to mention the loss of our airline and cruise line business. But now we're back. Our tasting rooms are open, and you can now book a tea time at the course at Wente Vineyards. Wente has always been on the forefront when it comes to sustainable farming and innovative sustainable initiatives. Just last month, for example, Wente became the first winery to utilize the world's first fully electric smart tractor. It's produced by Monarch Tractor, also located in Livermore. Wente is leading the way in electrifying the agricultural industry on a global basis. Wente is part of an exclusive group of wineries in California that are certified sustainable in both the vineyard and in the winery. Only 4% of California wineries can make this claim. I look forward to our discussions today about developing our local rich agricultural assets into products that are appreciated and consumed all over the world. Whether we turn these agricultural products into a juicy plant-based burger or into a delicious bottle of California wine, our local agricultural market is leading the way for innovation and sustainability. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of today's panel discussion, Dr. Glenda Humiston. Dr. Humiston is Vice President of University of California, Agriculture and Natural Resources. She came to UC-ANR with more than 25 years of experience working on public policy development and program implementation supporting sustainability. Dr. Humiston began advocating for farmland preservation while serving as a Peace Corps volunteer in Tunisia, and then worked several years as a consultant on environmental and agricultural issues back in the USA. She served President Clinton as Deputy Undersecretary for Natural Resources and Environment at USDA. In 2009, Dr. Humiston was appointed by President Obama to serve as the California State Director at the US Department of Agriculture. In 2009, she earned her PhD from UC Berkeley in Environmental Science, Policy, and Management with research focused on US Farm Bill policy. She has a master's degree in international agricultural development from UC Davis and a bachelor's degree in animal science from Colorado State University. Without further ado, I present to you Dr. Glenda Humiston. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I had to unmute myself there for a moment. It's a great honor to be here with folks in the East Bay this morning. As you heard from our speaker, the chef, who did a great job. It's really exciting, the food opportunities and the history and all the multicultural activities going on here, as well as the economic opportunities around food and the farm to fork activities. I want to cover just a few of those this morning very quickly in order to set up our discussion with a very, very exciting panel that I think you're going to enjoy. First of all, let me just say that in my current position, I'm really thrilled to be able to work with cooperative extension throughout the state. The University of California, as the land grant university here, delivers new knowledge, does research hand in hand with local communities, local farmers and landowners to find solutions to the many challenges facing agriculture. We've got facilities all over the state and partnerships throughout the state. And for those of you that aren't familiar with us, please look us up. As you can see from our statewide programs and institutes, we do work on nutrition and economics, water. Our integrated pest management is an internationally award-winning program, as is our sustainable ag and others. And our volunteers, over 26,000, do a great deal of work that I think can help move us forward in getting people involved more in not just food itself, but the agriculture, the gardening, the processing, preservation. In fact, Master Food Preservers is one of our very popular programs that many people get involved with. I have to start off by just pointing out something many of you probably already know. Our agricultural and food systems really are facing some huge challenges. Climate change is just maybe the most recent we've been dealing with. But as you heard, I've been working on farmland preservation for almost 40 years now. We lose a lot of farmland every single year, not just here in California, nationally and internationally. It's a huge issue. Labor issues, pests, food safety is an increasing issue. And now we're looking at things like our supply chain fails, substandard nutrition, disease. All of these are issues that we have to look at if we're going to have a resilient and sustainable food system. And we saw an example of this last year, just about as brutal as it comes. I think many of us are very complacent about our food supply. Here in the US, for the most part, unless you're living in some of the worst of the food deserts, which unfortunately we do have around, you typically feel like you can go in the grocery store and get the kind of food you need. Well, what happened in March when we locked down the economy because of COVID-19 completely upended our food supply chains. Grocery stores had empty shelves. At the same time, farmers were dumping milk and plowing under vegetables and fruits. Food service dining went down. I mean, it just completely knocked our supply chains. And what we learned is they aren't as flexible and nimble as we need them to be in these kind of upheavals and catastrophes, of which we may well see more in the future. So to deal with that, we're trying to get our general public to understand the importance of this sector, and in particular, the economic importance. This is from a study we did a couple years ago that identified that our working landscapes in California are the 6th largest sector of the state's economy, something that most people have absolutely no idea of. And as you can see, agriculture is by far the biggest portion of that. And by the way, let me be real clear. Personally, I think it's probably the 5th largest sector of the state's economy, but we were extremely conservative in how we identified NAICS codes for this sector. For example, not one single penny of veterinary services is in that little green pie slice you see there, because we couldn't separate out pets from livestock. Similarly, every single penny of retail sales from the 150,000 plus grocery stores and markets in the state is not in that slice. This is all activity that is very much directly produced in California from California's working landscapes. And as you can see, it translates into not just direct sales, 264 billion in 2018, but a large number of jobs and earnings from those jobs. In the report that you saw in the page up there, you can see at the top a web page that you can go to. You can find these breakdowns of the production, support, distribution, processing by region, as well as a great deal more detailed information. Now, why is this important? Why is it important to understand these different sectors of the supply chain? Partially because if we don't understand them, we can't develop them, we can't find solutions to the challenges, and we can't take advantage of opportunities. And first of all, we've got to understand that supply chain is very different than industry cluster. A lot of people tend to use them as synonyms or blur them. But in reality, when we look at the supply chain, you're looking at that red arrow line going through support, production, processing, distribution. When we're trying to enhance activities here, we're typically looking for where there's bottlenecks or where there's new technologies or new processes that we can improve or enhance and fix the bottlenecks. That's typically what we're trying to do in supply chains. But look all around those supply chains at the industry sectors that intersect with them. Tourism, I mean, you just saw the chef talking. Tourism, food, retail, all of that is a huge part of the Bay Area's economy. Goods movement. The Bay Area has a big chunk of the state coming through it on the way through ports of Oakland and San Francisco onto foreign markets. This is huge. And there's a lot of manufacturing, distribution, cold storage, et cetera, that is a huge part of the East Bay's economy. Technology. We've got Silicon Valley and, the East Bay and Berkeley and all these other Lawrence Livermore labs down where our Wente vineyards are nearby. renewable energy, manufacturing, and I could go on and on and on. This is just an example of how different industry clusters intersect with the food supply chain. And our ability to see those intersections and be creative and innovative of how we can find new synergies, new opportunities, new collaborations is going to be critical to move us forward. One example of that I like to share for the East Bay to look at is something many of us have been working on for the past about 5 or 6 years in the Central Valley Ag Plus Food and Beverage Manufacturing Consortium. This is all about trying to harness the power of the farm to fork activity in these 28 counties to create jobs and economic activity. And what's really fascinating about this project, which was named by the Obama White House as one of its national manufacturing community partnership incentives, is that you're seeing the people come together in the entire ecosystem. And this is something that's often missing around industry clusters when we work on them. You know, the food processing people talk to other food processing people. The biologists talk to biologists. The workforce people talk to workforce people. But what you really need is you need the workforce, the market, the trade, the infrastructure, supply chain, access to capital, big, huge issue. And of course, from my end right now, research and innovation. You need all of these folks at the table talking to each other, finding those synergies. We're doing some great work here in California, as well as the East Bay on doing that. This is just one example of many of the partnerships we've created the last 4 years with the VINE, the Verde Innovation Network for Entrepreneurship. The key goal here was to identify innovative partners at the UC, CSU, community college, the private sector, governments, and have them start collaborating, leveraging each other, not competing, not reinventing the wheel, and get as much resource and return on investment out of that as we can. And we've had some real success. As one example, we just recently here in California received $20 million grant from USDA and the National Science Foundation around artificial intelligence for food systems. We're looking at how we can harness artificial intelligence at every single stage of the food production, processing, marketing system to enhance it, improve it, make it better and more available for people. And you can see it's a partnership not just of UC Davis, Berkeley, my own institution of Ag and Natural Resources, but Illinois, Cornell, and our USDA Ag Research Service. This kind of partnership and multidisciplinary work are really critical to move us forward. But I do want to say, you know, it's really exciting to talk about the big, fancy artificial intelligence work, but we can't lose sight of the local homegrown items either. This is an example I love from Humboldt County, where they have utilized their county fairgrounds to be an incubator. They've actually started up, they've provided rooms, commercial kitchens, etc., and now have over 15 different businesses that have started up at the fairgrounds. Some of them have had to move off because they got so big there wasn't enough room there. And this is something we could be doing more of all around the state, giving these entrepreneurs the access they need to commercial kitchens or space or whatever else they need locally, because often that's what they're missing. So with that, let me close out by saying, I think the future of ag is very exciting, the future of food, but we do have to start tying our ag efforts, our food, our nutrition and health all together. We're really talking about a food 3.0 that really focuses on the best nutrition, food for health, our supply chain integrity being very sustainable as well as traceable, sustainable ag production of all types, nutritional security, decreasing food waste, a huge issue we've got to deal with, and then really having better connections between our farmers and our consumers. And frankly, I would say every aspect of our supply chain having better relations with each other. So with that, I'm going to end this and introduce our panelists. We've got, as I mentioned, a very exciting set of panelists for you all today. And I'm going to introduce them real quickly with a very brief introduction. They'll probably offer more themselves. They're going to each offer up just a few minutes of broad thoughts from their perspective on this issue. And then we're going to get into a dialogue with each other, asking some questions and trying to hone down into that. After that, we're going to open this up to all of you in the audience to ask questions. And I will encourage you to please put your questions in the Q&A function. If you put it in the chat room, sometimes it gets lost, but the Q&A function we'll definitely be looking at. So without further ado, let me introduce our four panelists. Tyler Jamison is the Vice President of Government for Impossible Foods. He's also worked on Capitol Hill as a legislative assistant and as Director of Policy for the U.S. Wheat Associates, as well as several other positions. After him, we'll hear from Kimberly Lee, who's the co-founder and CEO of Prime Roots. She describes herself as a scientist, entrepreneur, foodie, who's determined to make positive changes in our global food system. Prior work was at UC Berkeley and Berkeley Lab, focused on sustainability and microbiology. Rob Leibowitz is the CEO of Kite Hill, and he's got more than 30 years of management and brand building experience with global A-list mega brands, as well as numerous founder-led backed portfolio companies, such as Del Monte and Mars. Last but not least, Betty Kaufman is the Director of Product Development for CCD Innovation. She has overseen product development from concept to commercialization for several companies and is a certified food scientist, as well as being certified in the culinary arts. So with that, let me throw it to you, Tyler, to hear some opening comments.
Sure. Thanks, Glenda, and thanks everybody for having us here today. It's really great to be here. I moved to the East Bay from DC about 4 years ago, and I love it with the zeal of a convert. So we're very proud to be an East Bay company also. Impossible Foods, for those who don't know, we were founded in Redwood City, but our headquarters are there. We have about 900 employees total now, but we actually do a lot of our operations in Oakland as well. Our first manufacturing plant where we make a lot of our burger is in East Oakland over by the airport. In terms of this panel and the future of food, from Impossible Foods' perspective, we see the future as being plant-based at a very basic level, but more broadly focused on sustainability. We've seen just huge growth, not just in our sales, but all sales of plant-based products and products which have a sustainable angle. The younger generations and even older generations are really starting to recognize the impact of our food system and diets and how that impacts climate change and the environment. And so we're really excited to be leading in that space where we take a very science-based approach to our company and our products, which is really important for us, being climate and sustainability focused. And we're seeing a lot of response to that. Thank you.
Kimberly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Prime Roots. And we make alternative meats and seafoods using our koji-based protein. Our whole mission is really to make it easier to eat plant-based. I'm actually a flexitarian. A lot of people, when they hear about it, say, oh, that's also me. And so for us, it's really about not being a vegan or plant-based company for vegans and vegetarians, but really about being a way to make it easier to eat plant-based for people like myself and for 95+% of people who still eat meat, and not make it about being vegan or not vegan. It's really about bridging the divide. And so we're very community focused in cultivating a community of eaters who want to be part of something that is inclusive and doing better than being perfect. And we make one of our most popular products, which is plant-based bacon. Yes, we did it as a whole cut bacon that sizzles, and you can have it crispy or chewy, just like bacon. And then we also have a wide variety of different products that make it easier for lunches, so ready to eat meals. We have like 5-minute dinners, really expanding our product line. We're really out to take down big food companies because there are no plant-based options if you go to the grocery store for the vast majority of products. And so going after the meats that fill a lot of different products as well as the meats themselves. We are direct to consumer only, found online. That's primeroots.com. And we're really interested in other ways of being direct to our consumer, born and bred in Berkeley, California as a company 4 years ago. So we love the East Bay, and it's definitely been a really, really big part of our success so far.
Great. And Rob.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Fun to talk about plant-based and about the East Bay. By way of background, I'm a Berkeley native. So I grew up in Berkeley. I went to Berkeley High. I went to university in Northern California, and we live in the Bay Area now. It's just a wonderful place to live and to work and to bring in talent and to bring back to the community. So great to be here. I'm the CEO of Kite Hill, and we're a plant-based company. If I were giving you sort of a statement on how to think about us, that we feel like we're changing the game with great tasting plant-based foods that help people feel great. And I'll explain that one bite at a time. And when you think about feeling great, depends on which data you're looking at, but probably half of all people globally are interested in eating plant-based. Many people are lactose intolerant. Many people want to do good for the environment and for animals, and we cater to that group. And what makes us different is the great tasting part. For many years, it was really hard to buy plant-based foods that offered great taste, great texture, were colored correctly, etc. And so we really, our small and emerging brand has really been based on delivering great tasting foods, and I can feel good about it, and I'm going to come back and buy it because it tastes great and it does great. And we found just a really passionate, loyal following of people who can eat great tasting foods and feel like they're doing some good externally at the same time. And that's sort of our path, which is to continue to find dairy alternative places that we can enter with great tasting foods. We have our chief corporate headquarters and manufacturing location in the city of Hayward. We have another manufacturing location up in Portland, Oregon, but for all practical purposes, we employ about 100 people in Hayward between our manufacturing location and our corporate staff. We do look forward to returning back to the office sometime soon. For those of us who have not been essential to manufacturing, we've been working remotely. And I think like all of you who are in the East Bay, you're probably contemplating some plans to return people back to the office, as are we. And so we're just looking for, all of the different guidance we can get on how to make that return both safe and productive. I just to touch on a couple of the points that you asked us. Look, we really see the future of food as being that of choice. People want options that taste great across whether it's meat, dairy, or plant-based, and we squarely fit into choice. But people really don't. And I'd say when you talk about choice, we don't think people want to buy stuff that doesn't taste good, look good, feel good. And so, and choice is much more prevalent today. If you see what everybody on the panel is now offering, I would offer that Prime Roots and Impossible Foods are sort of the hallmark for offering no sacrifice, right? Which is exactly what consumers want. And so we see that as a future of food, which is just more and more choice for people who have different lifestyles, different passions, and so on. And I would also just offer that COVID-19 has had some headwinds and some tailwinds, right? Headwinds have been for all of these new products that we're all offering, shoppers have seemed a little less reluctant to spend time in stores really investigating. It's just the nature of like wanting to get in and out of a store or just buying online. And at the same time, COVID has had people really think hard about like what's health about, what's choice about. And so there's been a tailwind with people wanting to eat plant-based in numbers that we've long passed the tipping point as far as I'm concerned. And plant-based is now not something that's over in the corner in a store or online, but it's front and center. And then certainly, from a human point of view to the companies, the headwind with COVID has been, how do you do all of this, manufacture, work from home immediately? Because I think most folks turned on a switch sometime in March a year ago. And so that's certainly an obstacle we've all had to tackle. And at the same time, the real interesting headwind is for most companies that folks started working differently. And now we've got a year plus in doing it. And there's just a lot of high productivity that's happened with flexible schedules. And so I think that there's a lot of really great stuff that's come out of COVID from a human point of view that we all have to think about. How do you keep as the world returns back to some form of pre-COVID normalcy?
Thanks, Rob. And Betty.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation. I am Betty Kaufman. I am the Director of Product Development at CCD Innovation. We are a culinary-focused product development agency located in Emeryville. And most of our clients are CPG and QSRs, but we really love to focus our work on some of the startups in the Bay Area because we know that's really where food trends are starting. And because of our location, we have so much access to upfront innovation and trends in the food and beverage space. CCD is really known for our proprietary methodology of leveraging our over 100 Chefs Council to really start the innovation process and bring tangible, edible product concepts to consumers faster. But what people don't really realize is in the last couple of years, we've focused expanding our services on the back end of innovation. So today, we now actually have a commercialization council, which brings a variety of experts that have built their careers in certain processing capabilities to help our clients bring those products to the shelf faster and in the timeline that the industry is now dictating. When COVID first hit, it was CCD realized very quickly that consumer values are changing and we can't interact with consumers in the way that we used to. So we developed a few methodologies to get into consumers' homes with the products that we're developing to better understand how short-term and long-term COVID is affecting the products and how they resonate in their lives. And recently we really realized that there's two big drivers for the future of food. And one is convenience. A couple of years ago, our clients would have said, convenience means handheld, no mess, fits in your gym bag. But consumers aren't saying that anymore. What they really want is convenient products that fit in with their lifestyle when their lifestyle is changing. Their values are changing. They don't know what today is going to be like versus tomorrow. So they really need products that fit in with their decisions as their lifestyles are evolving, especially with COVID. And the second, very similar to what Rob was saying, is about choice. Consumers are wanting to connect to themselves, connect to their family, connect to their community, and most importantly, to the planet. And what we're realizing is that consumers do not want to sacrifice in any regard. And so these products, they need to be able to be sustainable, provide the nutrients, provide value. And if they want to eat meat one day, plant-based the next day, they need to have that flexibility of choice. And at CCD, probably about 75% of our projects these days are plant-based. And if that is in regards to meat or dairy alternatives, or if it's snacking that now incorporates more fruit and vegetables, we kind of see the gamut, but the dial is moving into plant-based across all product categories. And it's really exciting for CCD because we're also seeing a shift in upcycling. So we're noticing that a lot of our consumers and a lot of our clients, upcycling is not what it was 5 years ago. Today, it's really identifying those ingredients that are already in their food system, but how can they kind of revive them, keep them, and then create a more holistic food system in their own cycle. So that's really where we're seeing very exciting innovation within food and beverage products.
Thank you, Betty. So you all touched on quite a few different areas. What I'd like you to do, and let's go back up to Tyler and Kimberly first. What can the East Bay really start zeroing in on to be more intentional about how we connect sustainable farming and land use to our food and our farming and our food manufacturing? What are some of the opportunities you've seen? I mean, you've come to the East Bay, so you obviously saw something here.
I think we started in the East Bay. I know Impossible started just across the bay, so similar communities, but we started here in the East Bay. And like the reason I started Prime Roots is because of getting educated about the issues and the problems. So I think that as a wider community, at every level of government, education, even companies, we can do a lot better of educating the public about why we're doing the things that we're doing. I think 94% of consumers in our surveys have said they want to eat more plant-based, but don't necessarily know how. And may have heard about Impossible Beyond alternative meats, but may not be open to it for whatever reason. And it's really about messaging and education, and then also promotion of the great businesses that are supporting sustainable practices and sustainable businesses.
So I guess in terms of creating an ecosystem, I think that there's a lot of opportunity, especially post-COVID, as we try to build back in a more thoughtful way. Is the Silicon Valley and East Bay connection is really important for us. We have all the great universities and the great research capability. And in the East Bay and Oakland especially, there's a lot of history of food processing and manufacturing that's gone down some in the past few decades. And I think that as we look at how we use our land going forward, how we, I know Oakland's going through a tax revamp. If we look at ways to incentivize and promote manufacturing, sustainable manufacturing, and utilizing our existing historic capabilities and pluses, I think that is a real opportunity that we have in the East Bay. In terms of supply chains and such, I'm not the right person to talk to that. We source from the big commodity suppliers, but I think that especially for some of the more niche and artisan brands, there's a lot of opportunities with the diversity of agriculture that we have in the area.
Thanks. Betty, somebody wants to know a little bit more about what you mean by upcycling, and anybody else that wants to add to that as well.
Yeah, upcycling right now is trying to better understand how we can revive ingredients that used to be in a waste stream to now be a value-added product. And there's a hierarchy of upcycled products, from putting it back into livestock feed, but the top of that hierarchy is really putting it back into human consumption. And upcycling used to be known as kind of ugly produce. What do you do with the pulp from juice manufacturing? But today there is so much more variety, and it can happen within our own food ecosystems. So if it's a waste product, you can repurpose it to add value. And what's really exciting is that the Upcycled Food Association just launched their new upcycled certification, so that products can be certified as upcycled. So consumers now have a direct reference to knowing the implication of something that is labeled as upcycled. Hope
Great.
that helps.
Anybody else want to comment on that? No? Okay, well, because there's huge opportunities. I mean, all of us have seen issues around food waste. I mean, estimates are 30 to 40%, and that's at different stages. I mean, some loss in the field, some loss in the processing, and at the home, consumers themselves. I mean, I know myself, fortunately, I'm composting, as I think many of us are, but still, even that's not the most effective use of our food supplies. Any other thoughts on that issue, and maybe even thoughts on what some of our listeners can do themselves more of?
Well, one note on a lot of upcycled products, there was a big concern on the safety of repurposing some of those ingredients. But what's recently happened is there is a lot of innovation in regards to dehydration processing that can be applied in the process to leverage more of those upcycled products. So I think we're going to see more of it in the upcoming years, now that we have more of a safer way to really utilize and repurpose those ingredients.
Great. Before I jump to the next question, I just want to remind our audience, we did get the settings corrected so that you can chat with all panelists and attendees. So if those of you that made comments earlier want to repaste them to the other attendees, please do. And please don't be shy about throwing comments in the chat and getting to know each other. I know in some of these kind of webinars for me, I actually see things I want to follow up there and people I might want to meet later. So I like a lively chat room, and I would imagine all of our speakers do as well. So with that, let me follow up on Betty's comments, because it's not just about upcycling. How about sharing with us your thoughts on incorporating sustainability all the way through production, manufacturing, packaging, distribution? What kind of things are you looking at there, not just for your company and your work, but again, the East Bay, our economic development entities, how could they facilitate us being able to do that better?
Yeah, and I think it's top of mind for CCD as well as our clients. What's really exciting about being in the East Bay is that sustainability is not just an issue in food and beverage. It is an issue across many industries. And I think the East Bay really promotes innovation across all industries. And it's a great opportunity that CCD really tries and leverage innovation outside of food and beverage that we can apply. If that's cosmetics, if it's tech, if it's other science-based industries, there's a lot of innovation that we can leverage. Most of our work, since we are not the end manufacturer, we really focus on packaging and trying to develop products that, although we're not packaging engineers, we need to make sure that the products we develop are not going to go into some overly engineered plastic bottle. Or is it going to be single use? Can it be a multi-pack? Does it need to have multi-layers of plastic, or can we remove some of that and identify a better choice? And it's really CCD's job to help guide our clients to at least what's out there as an option so that they can be aware of their choices.
Rob or other panelists?
I just to add, another thought from the perspective of food manufacturer, that in early days in emerging companies, without heavy capital investment, you end up with a lot of what we call yield loss, which is just in making a product, you end up throwing a bunch away because it sticks to the pipes or it didn't come out the way you wanted it to. And so folks like us, and we've spent millions of dollars in capital investment in Hayward to just make sure that out of 100% of materials that we put in, that we get close to 100% out. And so that for us is like the biggest single thing that we could do to really help eliminate food waste. Anything that we've made, which is getting close to code, we tend to give away, to needy. And so that's another important thing that can be done rather than throw it away, including the energy it costs to throw stuff away. One thing that's interesting is there's emerging technology now in recyclability for many of consumer packaged goods, but it's still not 100% there yet in terms of the ability to take, for example, in yogurt, like we use plastic cups, and the ability to use paper or something that's far more recyclable it's emerging technology. And so we're doing what we can to learn, but at the same time, it goes back to, you put paper cups into a facility and you might end up throwing a lot of stuff away too. And so that's a big hope. Then maybe for the East Bay, we can attract, firms who are making that kind of technology that we could then use and lead, locally within the US and then globally, really convertible, sustainable packaging too.
Tyler or Kim? Tyler?
Yeah, I know just enough to be dangerous on the recycling issue, but I know that the recycling infrastructure is something that the United States generally needs to work on. Beyond, we're working on making all of our packaging sustainable, recyclable, or compostable. We started a direct-to-consumer web store during the pandemic where folks could order Impossible Burger directly to their home. Most of that was recyclable or compostable, but not all of it. And then even if it is recyclable, my understanding is that a lot of places still aren't able to process it. It used to get sent to China, now it doesn't, and so it just goes to waste. And so there are two different things that need to be worked on in terms of packaging, but that's the biggest area in our operations that we look to improve.
Yeah, but let me push back on you, Tyler, and maybe Kim as well, because it's not just the packaging. You know, one of the things I've really enjoyed watching this last several years is work that UC Davis is doing at the Mondavi Center, where they've got very small scale, I think it's a brewery, a winery, cheese and tomato sauce, so that they can test the whole production capacity. And one of the goals they're seeking is net zero use of water. I mean, a lot of people don't understand when we talk about how much water is on a typical plate of food, at least half of that is generally after the crop is harvested. It's not from irrigation, it's from processing. And reducing use of water as well as other energy, et cetera, in the processing, packaging, production capacity is a huge opportunity. So I'd be curious to know if some of the rest of you are looking at that kind of issue specifically.
And I think, Glenda, like you really hit the nail on the head, right? It really is about, you know, what happens after. And the fact of the matter is the vast majority of crops that are grown in the United States and worldwide is fed to animals. And, you know, animals are, in my opinion, outdated technology to create protein and to create meat, which is why we're trying to make it more efficient, closer to 1-to-1 in terms of energy in to energy out for protein. So I think inherently in all of the panelists here today, like that is, you know, front and center in the work that we do. And I think it really is about, you know, getting consumers to adopt our products and for us to talk about how do we get more people to eat what we're making and educate them about why what we're doing is, you know, tens, if not hundreds of times better than what is conventional. I think for, at least as I feel this very much in our business, we are hundreds of times better already than the conventional option. So for us to micro optimize something rather than focusing on getting our food into the hands of more consumers is a little bit out of the, like, it's not what we ought to be doing. As you know, we're all startups, all small companies still. We want to make a big change. So it's not about thinking about the micro optimization, but the much larger picture of replacing all animals in our food system. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but to me, you know, we obviously think about making our packaging more sustainable, what we can do in every single aspect. And that's just part of the mission and part of the vision of the companies. And it's so ingrained in every decision that I make and every decision that our team makes that for us, it really is like not spending time thinking about how do we make this thing 5% better, but how do we get 5% more people to eat the foods that we're making? Because that makes, you know, hundreds of times much more larger of an impact.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Kimberly, and she could have been our CEO speaking just now. It sounded very familiar to me. But we do, recycling and packaging is certainly not the only thing that we look at. We're not quite large enough to have field level work with our supply chain, but we are working on that. We work on reducing our water waste. Unfortunately, there's only so much we can do because a lot of that is from sanitization and cleaning of our facilities, but we are working on scope 1 through 3 sustainability projects right now.
Yeah. And I am afraid I'm going to have to push back a little on some of Kim's comments because I don't want to spend the next 2 months having my animal science community beat the heck out of me. There is a role for animals in agriculture in many, many different ways, and the science and economics clearly prove that. I think what we need to find is how to make sure it's all sustainable and that it's humane and that it is best serving the triple bottom line, our environment, our people, and our economy. So I know I, for one, want to find how all of these different options for nutrition and food security can serve folks. You know, 40% of the land mass of the planet can only be harvested through grazing of ruminants. And we cannot lose sight of that or the importance of it to other countries throughout the world. Just because our US tends to feed livestock in ways that aren't sustainable, and I will agree with you there, doesn't mean that there isn't a role for livestock in the food system globally. And Rob, I know you've actually commented on that. I saw an article interviewing you when you took this new position. And I don't want to go down this path too much because I want to get back to economic development in the East Bay and what some of the opportunities for folks are, but I could not let that statement go by, sorry.
So tell me, give me context on, because I could go off on a tangent here.
Yeah, I saw you made a comment, I think it was you, about how you didn't want to get in a fight between plant-based and dairy-based products, that didn't really ultimately serve the consumer.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm just a common sense person.
Yeah.
And, I think, our company's role is to provide the 50% plus of the population with great choices to make their lives better and to do good.
Mhm.
Simple. And that, I also have a very strong belief that, some of which is data that I've read, some of which is just my own opinion, that when people are buying plant-based products, that they understand what it is that they're getting. And I've seen studies, on plant-based milk, for example, where people aren't expecting, other than they're fluid and they offer variety, to get the exact same nutritionals out of one versus the other. I mean, there's ingredient panels, there's NLEA, there's all sorts of information. And so, so I'm not trying to equal dairy on every single attribute. I am trying to equal dairy's taste, texture, and color, so that those people who, for whatever reason, haven't had a cream cheese on a bagel in 25 years and want that experience to taste, texture, can have it. And so this wasn't about either or. This is about choice for those people who want plant-based options, and the taste profile and the nutritionals that come with it. We want to be something that provides a delightful experience. And so this was never about saying that the role of dairy or meat and the nutritionals that come with it are bad. This was about saying that consumers deserve a choice on the taste, texture of dairy or plant-based alternatives. And we're going to be great at delivering that and very clear about what it is.
Maybe this is a good segue into the overall picture of nutrition and actually tying it to healthcare. We all know that poor nutrition leads to poor health. And actually, some of the interesting work that we've seen coming out recently from our Nutrition Policy Institute and others is that, we all individually are so different. Some people may actually thrive more on a plant-based than having less meat. Other people might be the opposite. Some people on a plant-based diet might be better with these plants than those plants. I mean, there's a lot of the micronutrient studies we're just now starting to understand and tie into individual physiology and healthcare. Some very exciting opportunities in the future. And I particularly think in the Bay Area with, our medical centers, our research labs, all the opportunities we have here to really drill down into that subject. What are some of the rest of you seeing about that? And I know, Kim, you've done work in microbiology. You've probably got quite a bit of background looking at how the micronutrients and all that might interact with our individual physiology and health.
I haven't done much work on nutrition. I don't think very many people realize how unknown nutrition is. And like you said, it is so personalized. And so we don't prescribe any given lifestyle in anybody, and which is why we're big advocates of flexitarianism and embracing being trying different things for your own body, and being inclusive as possible. And I think there's a question about the importance, or a comment about the importance of collaborations and supply chain. I think that what we're talking about, probably the reason why you all chose to have this set of panelists is because we are trying to be a part of the new food system. And I think it's about lifting our entire society, our entire planet up. And it's not necessarily about, hey, we're going after, this company or this industry. The fact of the matter in protein, at the very least, is that even with the plant-based innovations today and the meat-based technologies, cannot sustain a population going into the future. And so there has to be shifts. And with that shift, I think that we don't necessarily need to leave consumers out of that. We don't need to leave other food manufacturers out of that. There was a really wholesome story about, there was a ranch, I think in Iowa, something, where they converted from their traditional meat-based production to oat production. Like, there's ways that we can involve a lot of producers in this conversation, and it really is about having these conversations and about, it's not being one-sided or another, but really a collaboration. So I really wanted to make that point, because kind of diving into these little crevices really brings us away from, I think, the larger conversation, which is how do we all work together to make a nutritious food system that supports both the people, individual people, communities, and our planet.
Other comments on that before I go to the next question? Tyler?
Yeah, I would just say, we think about nutrition a lot, and we get attacked on nutrition and being overly processed a lot also, frankly. But we think about it, we're making plant-based burgers and pork and sausage. We're not making kale. So our goal is to be as healthy or healthier than the animal-based product that we're replicating, but we don't claim to be a health food. But we do make a lot of effort to be equivalent. We have, better cholesterol rating, we have higher available protein, we have good iron content, etc. And as we iterate, we do make sure that the next version is as healthy or healthier than the last project or the last version of the burger or anything else.
Betty, did I see you take yourself off mute?
Yeah. One additional note just on personalized nutrition that we're seeing is that, consumers, I think, as we all are noticing, want that choice. And the goal of the plant-based movement is not to turn everyone vegan, but it's really to give everyone the options so that we can expand our food system. So some of the pressure is alleviated off of livestock, off of meat, knowing that needs to be there, but consumers want the choice. Mm-hmm. And we're even seeing that in protein bars, caffeinated beverages, high fiber snacks. Consumers don't always want 20 grams of protein. They don't always want the 200 milligrams of caffeine. They want a variety so that they can pick something that feels best for their body that day. Because today is not tomorrow, and who knows what that's going to look like. You might need something different. So they need that variety and that choice.
Yeah. Rob, anything?
No, I think everyone's covered it.
Well, so, we've got a couple comments here about consumers really don't understand nutrition. They don't understand their food supply. They don't understand how the supply chain works. And actually in the questions, there's somebody asking about any work with K through 12 on getting young people to explore science and be more aware of all these issues. Can you guys spend a few minutes about how you see opportunities to better educate consumers and customers and maybe even where you see some of your customers in the future that you're targeting and how we can educate them better, including starting at K through 12? Who wants to take? Betty, go for it.
Sure. I think some of the best conversations come out of issues. Something that I think that I love that you covered on, Glenda, is that when COVID started, our food system, it was all over the news that you couldn't find eggs on the shelf, you couldn't find produce, but there was all these images of them being thrown away. And it's those kind of moments where you can put it in front of kids, you can put it in front of consumers, and you can have kind of that provoking conversation of why did this fail? Why is this going wrong? And what do you think could be a solution? And it's just encouraging those conversations with the real life scenario so that it's not theoretical. Because I think that's really where most consumers struggle, is that if it doesn't connect with them, sometimes it's not necessarily believable or it's too far away to really impact their lives. So having the conversation in regards to how it fits in with them and how it reflects their life, their choices, and their future and their kids' future is really the best way to connect and try and have them also be part of the solution rather than just the problem.
Absolutely. Others? Other thoughts? Tyler?
I mean, not particular. I think that Betty answered it better. All of our conversations are more about sustainability and impact of the diet and less on the nutritional aspect, which we just value that more.
Well, so we've only got about 4 minutes left before we have to shut this portion of the agenda off and kick it back to the East Bay EDA folks. Let me ask each of you to give kind of a closing 30, 40 second of what do you see as really the key trend driving the future of food right now? And any thoughts you have on how we can drive that trend into the most positive direction? You know, there's always a lot of options. How do we really make it as positive as we can for the triple bottom line, our people, our planet, and prosperity? Who
Well,
wants to take that?
I'll start, Glenda.
Go for it, Rob.
So look, if I really step back with the widest lens on food, to many people, food equals love. And food is something which is personal, and food is, you know, so while it's fuel, it's certainly one of the main enjoyments as, you know, as people that we have. And I think that when you sort of step back and think about it that way, that the future includes so many options that taste great, look great, feel great. And that hasn't always been the case with items that we might characterize as either plant-based or better for the planet or better for animals. I mean, those two things actually didn't intersect for many, many, many years. You know, you sort of had to say, all right, I'm going to have a plant-based product or something that I might characterize as better for the environment or better for animals. And it tastes like a loofah, right? It just wasn't good. And that's really not the case. You know, when I eat an Impossible burger, and I've tried them side by side with Pat at Impossible, I can't tell the difference from a taste point of view. I think it's beautiful. And, you know, and I think that many products, including those from us at Kite Hill with cream cheese and ricotta cheese and our pasta items, that those sacrifices are going to be far and few between. And in fact, I think that kids who go to Burger King someday will wonder why did they ever kill a cow when I could have just had the Impossible Foods one. And so I think the future is about choice and about not sacrificing. And, you know, we're past the tipping point, but we got a long way to go before everything tastes as good as it could.
Yeah, great. Tyler?
Yeah, so echoing a lot of what Rob said, I think it is going to definitely be about choice and creating options that consumers choose. But I think it goes back, we're seeing an evolution from consumers caring about where their food comes from. It's been going on for a while. It started with locavores and people concerned about local food systems with Alice Waters. But now there's even more focus on where your food comes from a sustainability standpoint. And I think there's a ton of opportunity for the triple bottom line, working in DC with USDA on carbon bank and sustainability programs, making sure we work with our supply chain to incentivize more sustainable practices, et cetera. And then putting it in front of consumers, giving them the options and letting them decide.
And before the other two speak, let me just comment. We did have an earlier chat that just came to panelists, comments from a few people from the financial world. For example, the Women's Investment Club and a few others. They're looking at this for places they can do impact investing. You know, they want to invest in the good products. So for those of you out there that have those great products, I would say throw it in the chat room. I'm sure they're looking at that right now and they may follow up with you. So on that happy note for some of you out there, Kim or Betty, who wants to do that final question real quick?
I can go for it. Kind of going back to what I mentioned initially is that we're really seeing consumers eager for connection to their food, connection to themselves, connection to the community, and, you know, to the planet. And I think to Rob's point, they're really not wanting to sacrifice. Flavor is first. And I think a lot of the consumers are very interested in what's happening in food, and that'll get them to purchase it once. But unless it tastes great and meets all of their needs, from sensorial attributes to nutritional attributes, as well as to the story of the product, they're not going to buy it a second time. And our motivation at CCD is really to create a product that solves a consumer problem, as well as fits in with their lives, as well as their taste buds, and they want to purchase it a second time. They don't feel like they have to purchase it, but they want to. And we're really seeing that consumers, when it comes to better for the planet, it's not just about the ingredients anymore, not just about what's coming into the product, but why it's there, how it was made, what is the company, what is the brand ethos. It's all this holistic package that I think consumers are really starting to care more about rather than just the food product itself.
Mhm.
I think there's either a Forbes or like a Fast Company article recently that was published about how it's not just the taste alone that's getting consumers to buy plant-based products, but it really is the holistic experience and then the why and the education behind the product. And so that's why at Prime Roots, like we're not just focused on making the best products and making like products that can help consumers have more choices in the foods that they know and love and already eat, but also working on the education front about, you know, why we're doing the things that we're doing, and having, I think, these conversations about how do we make sure that no one gets left out of the fold, and how do we make sure that we as a larger community come together and embrace the changes that need to happen in our food system. I don't think that plant-based is a trend. I think it's a fundamental shift. And it's, you know, if we get ahead of it, we don't need to leave people behind. And I think having these conversations is really important. But I think like the consumer side of things is probably the thing that is most top of mind for us, is really building those bridges and those communities. And right, like Rob said, like food and love go together, and building those connections through food, I think is uber important.
Great. So I got to say, kudos to Supervisor Keith Carson. He has decided he's enjoying this so much, he's going to give us a little extra time and make his remarks short. So we got a couple more questions we can do. A couple questions have come in concerning use of water, irrigation, particularly now with the drought going on, and you know, loss of farmland. Challenges like this, and just, you know, the input, the farming itself. And I know none of you are farmers, you're not farming, but as you look at, you know, your supply chains, how you're accessing product, and just policy in general that you may have opinions on, anything you want to offer along those? We've got several questions about those. Someone? You could say no to it.
I can try. You know, I don't even try to understand fully the politics of water in California, especially. It's something that we work on in our supply chain and something that we care about. We just joined a couple of other companies based in California to support some bills in Sacramento that would help with underserved communities and making sure that they are not disproportionately bearing the brunt of this drought that we're entering and that's getting worse. But I would not pretend to be an expert on farm supply chain water issues.
And Tyler, before you go, questions popping in that you and Kim may want to answer as well as the others. Are the participating companies privately held, or can stock be purchased? How would an investment club invest in your particular company? So don't lose the opportunity to speak to that for a moment either.
We are privately held, not currently doing a fundraising round that I'm aware of, but if you want to get in touch with our CFO, I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you.
Anybody else about the farming or who to talk to about financing? Kim?
I think we're the same boat. I think a lot of companies are privately held, but with that being said, there are a lot of companies in our space going public. So I think, you know, Beyond Meat is a public company, Oatly is a public company. You know, most people would think that there are competitors, but really, like, we need to rise the tide for all producers and all food companies. So I'd say, you know, put your money where your mouth is and invest in sustainable businesses, whether that's, you know, privately held companies or publicly held companies. I think it's really important for consumers, investors to start thinking about like ESGs and a lot of the sustainability.
And I just say CCD, we're a family-owned and woman-owned company. Feel free to invest. But also I agree with Kim that I think investing in the future of food is really where the focus should be, and investing in the future of food that we want to see that future become.
And Rob, you know, an interesting question just came in about how do manufacturers of nationally branded foods interact with regional food systems? That is a great question.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, we've got a supply chain team who really, you know, work in the local communities. And if you think about it, you for Hayward, which is our principal manufacturing and corporate office, and in Portland, I think what's important is that, and this may not answer the question directly, but I think it makes sense to just note this, that we talked an awful lot about where we can participate, and while it's a bit of a non sequitur, when the issues of social justice occurred, really tangible big issues last year, as a company, we did make a donation to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. It was something important to us. But as we really thought about it, because we've sort of raised collective consciousness, it's important for us in times of need to give back to our local communities. And so, in Portland and in Hayward, when we've got close coated product, which is still delicious to eat and as nutritious as it ever was, we want to give back into those communities, as well as, when there were fires up in Portland, we just helped out. And so I think that, you've got a responsibility in the East Bay, and in particular to the city of Hayward as a manufacturer in Hayward and in Portland, to that city, to do what you can to participate in the local community and to give back where you can as a citizen, and to me, that's probably paramount.
Mhm, mhm. Unless there's a final quick comment on that, I'm going to shut us down. Gone. Okay. So let me close by just really thanking the East Bay EDA for hosting this gathering. I think this has been a really wonderful conversation. As you can see, there's still a lot of things we need to learn and understand and find solutions to. We've got challenges. We're talking about collaborations. I mean, the whole ecosystem of how to make this supply chain, the future of food work. There's so much to do. And all of you on this webinar have a piece in that, whether it's financing a company like the ones on the panel here, or reducing your own food waste, or planting a garden, or whatever. There's so many different ways each and every one of us can make a difference to have a positive future of food for ourselves and for our region and frankly for the world. So thank you for joining us today, and a big thanks to our panelists. This has been fantastic. And with that, I'd love to kick it over to Supervisor Keith Carson for some final words.
I too want to say a big thank you to the panelists for the information that you shared today on multiple levels. I mean, it shows and has expanded our knowledge about the ecosystem that we have with respect to the food revolution, which is still being led here in the East Bay. And I just want to say again, thank you for all that you're doing in the individual areas that you're involved in that impact our ecosystem overall. And so this has been a great panel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We want to thank all of you for attending today's East Bay EDA Spring Membership Meeting. And please make sure that you stay tuned and connected by nominating companies for the East Bay Innovations Award. If you haven't participated, it's really the Academy Awards of Innovation that takes place right here in the East Bay. When we do it in person, it's at the Paramount Theater, and it's just like attending the Academy Awards. So for businesses in Contra Costa and Alameda County, make sure you get in, contact them, let them know that you want to nominate them to be considered for one of the awards for the East Bay Innovations Award that is coming up in June. Or you have to get your information in by June of this year, and then look forward to the ongoing information about the Innovations Award, as well as all of our other signature events that are taking place. Our own online sharing of information that constantly takes place, our hard information that takes place, and we want you to be engaged as the diverse membership of East Bay EDA in helping us to continue to figure out what the next steps are to keep this the best place to live, work, and continue to do business. And with that, I want to say thanks to East Bay EDA staff and all of the members and those who joined us today. And if you're not a member, look at joining East Bay EDA. There are so many different areas that I'm sure you can be engaged in with our cross-sector organization, people bringing their experiences to the same table, talking about issues that affect us all in the East Bay. So with that, I want to say again, thank you very much, and I hope that everyone have a good day, and look forward to seeing you at our next East Bay EDA event. Have a good day.